Hey, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I'm going to have a go at killing another Zygo. So I'll state right at the beginning, don't do as I do, because with my history on these, if this one doesn't make it, that'll be 4. Now, one did have a virus. I'm not taking credit for killing that. That was on its way out when I got it. But the 2 latest growths on here are not doing so good. Oh my god. I did water this one deliberately. This has got a different reasoning for the repotting. Change the lolly stick for something better. Now these are brittle. They break as easy as hell. So I'm not going to do much poking around to get the media out. I'm going to wash it out with the tap, which is going to do far less damage. We do have some good roots here. But as I said, I don't want to poke around too much. The few that I've got I want to keep. But the roots, these are the 2 new growths here and here. And you could see that the aerial roots from those growths are not happy. Yeah, that's because they're not in any media. This is not a tree grower as such. So it doesn't normally have aerial roots. Yeah, I'm not going to play about with these roots too much, but we've got some, so that's good. And we have 2 new growths that have flowered, 2 spikes on each, so they won't be doing that again. But yeah, I'll clean up some of these sheaths to allow these roots to touch some media without having to do it through a rotting sheath. And the other thing I'm going to do is there's a bulb needs coming off round the back here. You know, that to get this at the right level and get the base of these pseudo bulbs on some media, that's going to get buried up to the hilt, so that needs coming off. Yeah, but I'm going to run this under the tap to clean the roots off. You have to excuse the dodgy finger, but basically, if you're going to make a curry and chop onions, it pays not to have too many glasses of wine before you get your sharp knife out. Otherwise, things like that happen. Lucky I didn't take the end of my blinking finger off. Don't handle knives if you've been drinking a few glasses. Not the best of ideas. Yeah, okay, I'll give it a rinse off, and as usual, I'll be back. Welcome back. I thought it's worth using my memory this time, but you've got roots here like that one. That's a brown root, but that's absolutely solid and it's branched. There's nothing wrong with that root. That, however, is a brown root and it's as soggy as hell. Yeah, that's as soggy as hell, but the bit sticking out the side is okay. So I've got to sort of go round and think, which bits do I want to cut off by feeling them, and check for any damaged ones, and then just hack at it with the scissors from memory, if you see what I mean, because I can't be bothered to keep poking around. So let's have a go then at trimming some roots. Now this is the bit, I'm right-handed, so I'll get round here and see if that works. But yeah, anything that looks dodgy is coming off. There's no point in putting stuff in the pot to rot. There's no point at all. You can come off. Most of these, even though they're brown, are actually okay. No one's not. You can come off. And the end of view. That one back to there. I'll say I'm not going mad here. I can see the most of the bad roots are. Guess what was in the middle of this root ball? Yeah, of course it was. Sponge block. What do you call it? Come on, brain and gear. Sphagnum moss pad that it was grown on as a youngster. So that wasn't a lot of good, and that's where most of the dead roots were. Surprise, surprise. So I know you can't see this very well, but As I say, it's just a matter of just gently squeezing. If they're soggy, they come off. But however, because of the way these roots grow, you don't just automatically take the whole root off because you've just felt a soggy bit on the end. Because sometimes it's just the end of the root that's gone and the rest of the root is fine. And if you trim the dead bit off, it'll shoot out. And then you get new multiple roots where before there was one. That's a bonus. I'll be taking much more off. As I said, when you get to the point where you're aiming at old roots and hitting good ones, it's time to stop. Take that one is going to come right off. Not taking too many off though, really. The last one that I repotted probably had less than half the number of these roots, but then that had a virus, so that didn't last long at all. That keeled over so fast after repotting that I genuinely thought I'd killed it, and then I sort of had a look around the plant itself, and we had lots of little circles all over the leaves. And in a couple of days, those circles went from very slight marks to indentations. The rings got bigger, yellower, and it went downhill over a period of 3 or 4 days incredibly fast. It surprised me, because I've never had a virus before. I've had other things I can do without, and that's not a virus. That's not bad. Right, so I'm going to leave that at that. I've taken that little bulb that would have got buried off. So what we've got left now is a back bulb. Another back bulb that did a funny thing before my time and grew another bulb out the top. Never seen that before. And then it's got the 2 new growths that hopefully have not gone beyond the point of the capability of pushing some new roots out. I hope they haven't gone beyond that point. Otherwise I've missed my chance. But looking at where a lot of the root growth is, it's on the older pseudo bulbs. So they can still grow roots. Anyway, I'm quite pleased with that as a root system. Now I've got to go and have a think about what the hell I'm going to pot that in, both pot wise and media wise. Bearing in mind these are not really epiphytes, they're more like terrestrials than epiphytes, although some of them do grow sort of at the base of trees and places like that. But some of them grow in the ground, and when you get to hybrids you never quite know what the hell you've got. So I'll go and have a think, and then I'll come back with whatever I decide. Whatever I decide, it'll probably be wrong. As I say, I just assume it's going to die because all the others did. You know, maybe lucky this time. If not, I'll go and get another one. You could think of a Zygo in my care as being like a very long-lasting bunch of flowers. If you go and buy a bunch of roses, you bring them home to die. And you accept that write-off of that cost because you know that's what's going to happen. But when you bring an orchid home, you don't expect it to die. But I've had flowers on this for ages and ages. They've scented my grow room, you know, and probably didn't cost that much more than a bunch of roses, if anything more than a bunch of roses. So, you know, I've had enjoyment out of it, even if it does go. But I'm determined to keep this one if I can. Right, let's go and sort out some media and stuff. I'll be back. Okay, this is going to be controversial, I bet. You've got people that, oh, I chuck my Zygos outside, they get the sun. I keep mine in heavy shade. I always let mine dry out in between waterings. I keep mine constantly moist. I grow mine in a real airy mix, so there's plenty of air around the roots. Well, I'm going to go by what that was in. That was in that coconut fibre stuff. You saw it. Practically a solid mess. Mass. Well, a mess. Yeah? And is that a good root system? Answer yes. So that's what it's going to get, the nearest I can. I don't have that coconut stuff because I don't like it. But the closest I can get is small bark. No big bits. Smallest bark I've got, and a hell of a shed load of sphagnum. Yeah? So that's what I'm doing. Good, bad, indifferent, right, wrong, disagree, agree, don't care. That's what it's getting. And it's based on a good root system coming out of a pot that didn't have any air in it, basically. Plus, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this is more like a terrestrial than an epiphyte. So it's growing in, you know, sort of leaf litter, in and around and on the ground even. Obviously we're talking species there, and these are all hybrids, but nonetheless all hybrids have come from species originally, you know, so the genes of those species are still there. You can't suddenly turn a terrestrial into an epiphyte, I don't believe. I think it takes a few million years to do that sort of thing, rather than one hybridizer. So this is going to get, oh, I've got itchy nose, quite a heavy mix. It's going to be a lot of moss in here and small bark, so there won't be a lot of air around these roots, and it will stay moist. But I can let it dry out in between waterings if I choose to. What I need is for that root system to be maintained and not go downhill fast. And then that will give the plant chance to do something. I don't know what it's going to do next, whether it's going to push roots out from those new growths, whether it's going to put some new growths out. I don't know what it's going to do next. I predict that it's going to die. You know, as I said, if the past record is anything to go by, there's quite a lot of moss in there. That is a heavier mix than I would use for a Repotting. But I'm going on the grounds, you know, it is fundamentally a terrestrial. It doesn't need loads of air around the roots. Is that enough, I ask myself? Yeah, I reckon so. We'll give that a go. I think that's all I can say is I'm going to give that a try. As is. So I have taken a precaution of some chunky bark in the bottom. It's an air cone pot, yeah, so it has this raised bit. If I turn it over, I'll probably lose all my chunky bark, yeah. So it has an awful lot of air capability of coming in the bottom of the pot, and that aids the media drying out more evenly, because it's drying out from the top of the pot and from the bottom of the pot. So in theory only the middle bit stays wet. But it is an aid to getting some air in and keeping the media evenly moist. You know, if you had one little tiny air hole in the bottom, then there would be virtually no drying in the bottom of the pot. So it would stay wet. And the top of the pot's bone dry. And that's how you get that layering effect that the orchids just don't respond to, because some of the roots are just sat stocky for far too long. Right, I haven't got a clue if or where the next new growth's going to be, but given that it put a new growth out either side of that bulb, if it does the same with these new growths, one or other side, obviously these two new growths need to be somewhere near the middle of the pot. So that's my theory. Now I've got to go careful with these roots. They are incredibly brittle. So let's get some down the back, and I don't want air holes. So even though I've got to do wiggling, I've got to do it very, very gently and not break the roots. It does have a branching root system, so in theory a damaged root is capable of shooting out higher up. But I just want to make sure that this just gently wiggles down, and I'm looking from the outside this time, not just trusting to judgment. I'm looking to make sure I've got those air spaces covered. And if you're planning on doing that and not leaving any air spaces at all, it pays to put it in a little bit at a time and not take it right up to the rim of the pot and then start poking. Just do it a bit at a time. And watch what you're doing. That way you know when you get them somewhere near the pot. And I don't want to be right up to the top, not yet. I want to top up later. So that's the back done. Now we come round here and have a go at this. Let's put my hands in the way as usual. So I'm being a lot more careful than I would normally be. I'm just gently teasing this down and watching what I'm doing. I can see where the root tips are, so I'm not forcing anything. It's a much more gentle approach. Except for that bit, because there aren't any roots there. By the time I've finished, I want this pretty compacted. I don't want this all loose and floppy with loads of air. I want this tight. More akin to if a plant started growing on the surface of the ground, the roots would have to fight their way in to hold the plant steady. So they're used to bullying their way through the soil or whatever medium they would naturally grow in, which is probably leaf litter, which is quite soft. But again, you know, they would keep pushing. I mean, some say these should go in a deep pot, like a cymbidium pot. You know, that's much deeper because their roots like to spread. Well, if this looks like the roots like to spread and it's starting to fill the pot up, I can pot it on into a bigger pot and give some more room to the roots. But let's see some active growing root tips before we start getting too big for our boots. Right, getting there. This bulb here doesn't need media all up round it. I need to concentrate on where these two new growths are and make sure that any new roots that come out from there get straight into something. None of this airy fairy stuff, straight out into media. And I also need the base of those pseudo bulbs to stay moist and encourage those roots. Is why we had a bit heavier on the moss this time. Okay, that's the base there. Now this one I can still see the roots extending down on this one, so we haven't got enough yet. You often find that when you repot, you often find different parts of the plant at different heights, and that's just how it goes. You just adjust your media accordingly. I don't mind if it's deeper this bit and shallow there. I'm potting that bulb, yeah? And that bulb needs to be sat down there at the surface of the media. This bulb's right up here, so there's going to be a slope to make sure that one is hydrated around the base. And that's about it. That's about it. I'm just going to do one last press down the sides. As I said, I want this pretty firm. That's pretty firm. It certainly won't need staking. Right, that's it. I'll give that 1 day before I water it, because the moss was moist. Those roots aren't going to dry out, but this new bark stays dry. It's quite difficult to wet, so obviously for a short period of time I'll be watering this quite frequently. But clear pot, I can see what I'm doing. Another thing I'm going to do, if I can find the right size pot, is this clear pot's going to stand inside a dark pot. Yeah? If it's erring towards the terrestrial side of life, like your Zygopetalums, they don't like their roots exposed to light. They like to be in the dark. But I like to see what I'm doing, so clear pot inside a dark pot achieves that goal. That's what I do with my paths. And with my Mazda I do the same thing, but I use a clay pot instead of a plastic pot. And the clay pot helps keep the roots cool. So evaporative cooling, or something it's called. Basically, as the clay pot gives off its moisture, it has a cooling effect. And I don't profess to understand that, I just need to know that it happens. Right. Is it dead yet? Updates will follow. I'm leaving that spike on. There's only a couple of flowers on it. And I've said before, on most orchids, the energy to produce the spike and open the blooms has already been taken from the plant at this point. But on these, that might not be true. If you think about it, this pseudobulb is not mature yet, but it flowered and it had 2 spikes. So where did it get its energy from? It must have been drawing its energy from these older bulbs, because this isn't big enough to be a storage organ yet. Yeah, so again, slightly different. So I suppose in theory I'll take that spike off, didn't I? Give the plant a chance. I'll see how the plant progresses. Oh, I've missed a sheath. The one the spike's got. God, they're tough little tykes, aren't they? There we go. Right, that's it. That's all it's going to get. Now let's put it back in the grow room to die. We shall see. Okay, thanks for dropping by. See you next time. And I may or may not still have a Zygo next time.